Hey all, welcome to lesson 1 of traditional funk and R&B rhythms. So what we're going to cover here is everything that makes up the rhythms and the background and the backbone of these styles from a drumming perspective, kind of from the ground up. Funk could be a very, very involved style. It could be really technical. There's a lot of independence involved. There's a lot of separate patterns involved. There's also a wide variety of groups and musicians and different subgenres that make up this style. But we're going to just kind of cover the essentials of where to begin foundationally and how to build up from there. Now, one thing to understand is where funk came from. You got to remember that funk sort of developed from the African American communities of the early 60s, but mainly coming from the soul and even the combination of jazz and fusion of a lot of those styles from the South and then moving into the North, and then started to influence a lot of different composers at the time who eventually got into Motown and eventually disco and different forms of music that eventually became what we know as funk. Now, funk rhythms on the drum set are very involved in different limbs of your body. There's a lot of different hi-hat or ride cymbal ostinatos or patterns we could be using. There is a variety of different moving notes on the snare drum, like ghost notes or displaced notes. There's a lot of bass drum movement, and not only just the movement of the bass drum, but the bass drum has to really link up with the rhythm section, predominantly the bass, and really drive the rhythm of the group, and to make sure that you're really speaking well musically from a rhythmic standpoint. What we're going to do in these first couple lessons is talk about the different surfaces of the drum set and a few different approaches we can have with techniques of how to develop those techniques and apply them to some different subgenres of funk in this early R&B, because they do change. The sounds change, the techniques change, the approach changes, that sort of thing. So we're going to start in this lesson 1 with the hi-hat. Now, with the hi-hat, we are going to start with a closed hi-hat, of course. We're not going to have a really loud open hi-hat. It's going to be more staccato, and we're going to talk about straight rhythms as well, like straight eighth notes, not really swung, maybe not just yet, but we're going to start with straight eighth notes. Now, the first approach I like to talk about with the hi-hat is playing really legitimately straight on the hi-hat with no accents, all right? Now, you could have two approaches to playing on the hi-hat with no accents. One is with the tip of the stick and playing sort of in the middle of the body of the hi-hat and having a full stroke with your arm to get that really staccato, straight, even sound, like this. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And what you're looking for, again, is the stick to come off the hi-hat a little. You don't want to be burying the stick in just yet for any sort of accent or, any motion, downward motion. The other approach you can use from time to time if you want a little more edgier sound with that straight approach is actually playing the stick a little flatter on the hi-hat and using what we call the shoulder of the stick right here, or even coming down a little bit on the shoulder and getting a little bit more of the meat part of the stick here. So you're getting a flatter approach like this. Not yet quite on that angle, but like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, I'm going from a more traditional base, okay? We're talking about older styles. We're not quite into a lot of the fusion styles yet, a lot of the drummers that really start exhibiting extreme techniques on the drums. This is an older style that we are covering at this point. But as it does start to develop, we do start getting into some more involved hand patterns with ghost notes and different dimensions of what you're playing. And the motion of the arms come into play. And that's when a style or a technique like the Moeller technique comes into motion. Now, for those who don't know much about the Moeller technique, we're talking about the wrist coming up, creating a whip stroke with your arm and your hand, and you have a downward stroke. And then as you prepare for the next stroke, you're coming back up with the wrist. So it's this nice full motion. Now, this is a motion of 2 strokes. So a down, up, up. There's of course 3, down, up, or down, tap, up, so on and so forth. But if we're just playing eighth notes with Moeller accents, we have the downstroke, the whip stroke, and then the upstroke. So the down, up, or whip, tap. And when we come down on the hi-hat to get that type of sound, we're whipping down with the stick, and we're striking the hi-hat now on an angle. And we're striking it with the shoulder of the stick, but this time on an angle rather than flat. And it'll look more like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you really want to work that motion by itself. This is one of the reasons why I'm covering the hi-hat without the other instruments for now, because there's a lot that goes into the technique of all the surfaces, but especially the hi-hat. And if you're not used to that Moeller technique, you really want to break it down and concentrate on those downstrokes, especially really driving down into those downstrokes. Down, to get that. So back to back, all 3 motions a little bit faster will be like this. First one will be straight with the tip. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Next one will be straight more with the body of the stick. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the last one will be with the Moeller technique and those strong down accents. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just the way that I'm going back and forth like that, you guys might want to try that on your own. It's good to just isolate your time hand on the hi-hat and try that from pattern to pattern so you really make a difference. One thing I've noticed to get the most out of your funk, traditional rhythms for funk and R&B, is to really be able to segment your sound and really push it toward what you're going for. If you're going for more of a Motown sound, it'll be like this. If you're going for more of a James Brown sound, it'll be more like this. More of a modern sound, it'll be like this. And we're gonna go through those in the future lessons coming up when we involve not only the different techniques, but the different surfaces as well. Stay tuned.